It's really the hidden fees that get you. Closing costs, fees, taxes, fees, furniture, fees, new monthly expenses like gas, water, trash, fees. And what's up with these interest rates? And why are houses soaring, going $100,000 over asking? What does this all mean for me? And even more importantly, why did One-Eyed Joe even leave in the first place? I don't know, but I'm just glad he's back. What's up everybody? My name's Nolan, or Professor G as my students call me. I'm a university professor and I'm excited to go over this topic with you guys today. In this video, I'm going to show you how my wife and I budgeted for our first home and what we should have budgeted for. So I'm going to give you all the details, all the expenses that you need to look out for, and what to think about when building your budget. Because there's a lot of things that nobody ever talks about. So before you can even budget for this house, you need to understand all the expenses that go into it, because it's way more than just the purchase price of the home. The biggest upfront cost right away will be the down payment. The FHA loan requires just a 3.5% down payment for borrowers with a 580 credit score or higher. Borrowers with credit scores as low as 500 can qualify for an FHA loan with a 10% down payment. There are benefits for those of you that can put down more on a down payment at 20% or higher, but we'll talk about that later. So at the bare minimum, to start out, a down payment of 3.5% on a house that's $500,000 is $17,500. And this cost is paid up front. So you need to have that in the form of a cashier's check. One of the biggest things that nobody really talks about is closing costs, because that's another thing that you're going to have to come up with up front. What I've seen in buying my home and looking at rental properties are that closing costs are generally 3 to 5% of the total purchase price of the house. From our example above, that puts us at about $35,000 that you're going to have to come up with up front. Now, the last infusion of cash that a lot of people put on the back burner and don't think about until maybe the end when they're about to make this purchase is the idea that you actually have to furnish this house. Most people come from an apartment or from their parents' home or something where they don't own these big appliances already. Things like refrigerators and washers and dryers, and then other things like couches and beds and tables. Usually, especially if you're coming from an apartment, you had things that were a little bit smaller to fit that size. But now going into a house, the space is a little bit bigger, and so maybe that furniture doesn't match that size of the house. On a $500,000 house, I would suggest that you budget for $50,000 for your upfront payment that you would need as soon as you are going to get into that house. So now that we have the initial cost, that's very important because that's going to be your savings goal to even be able to start shopping for this house. But that's not the only cost that you need to consider. Next is understanding what you can afford monthly in the form of a mortgage and what actually goes into the mortgage. So how is the mortgage calculated? So to calculate the payment for this house, you take the purchase price, you divide it by 12 because there's 12 months in a year, and you divide that number by 30 because you're usually going to get a 30-year mortgage. That's the first part of the equation. Then you need to add in the interest rate. And this is where a lot of people are going crazy because the interest rate is rising so high that it's pricing people out of being able to buy these houses. It doesn't seem like much, but an interest rate of 3% versus an interest rate of 4% can change your payment by $500 a month. Now, when doing the math and trying to figure out how to add in this interest rate, it's actually more complicated than it seems, and so there's a lot of good tools online that you can use to figure out exactly what this payment might look like. I like to use the mortgage calculator on businessinsider.com. Remember that included in this equation is the amount that you're planning to put down as a down payment. That's why I started this video with explaining to you that the down payment is not just a down payment alone. You're going to have to come up with the closing costs and furnishing as well. And so it's not as easy as just saying you're going to put an extra $5,000 down, because you might be taking that away from something else that needs to get paid. So just keep that in mind. On a $500,000 house with 3.5% down at a 5% interest rate, it's going to be about $2,590 per month. But that's not the end. Next is taxes. No matter where you live, there's going to be property tax, but the property tax does change based off of a couple different factors, like what city or county that you're in, and then also the age of the home. The newer the house, usually the higher the tax. The amount that you pay is based on a percentage of your property value, which can change from year to year. If we were to live in Anaheim, California, the average rate is 0.69% or $3,450 per year, or $287.50 per month, added to the $2,590 earlier, or a total of $2,877.66 per month. Unfortunately, that's not the end of the equation either. Next is going to be insurance. And there's two different types of insurance here. First is the homeowner's insurance or liability insurance that everybody needs no matter what. This makes it so that if there's theft or a fire burns down your house or a natural disaster of some sort that's covered happens to your house, that you're covered. And you definitely want this because this is such a huge price that it would just be devastating if you were to lose that. This insurance payment actually isn't that crazy. I thought it was going to be a little bit more when I was going through this, but it comes out to about $50 to $75 per month in California. Now, the other form of insurance is called PMI, or private mortgage insurance. This is the one that's assessed to your mortgage loan if you put less than 20% down. So this is just an extra expense that brings down the risk for the people giving you that loan in case you don't actually pay for it. And unfortunately, this money doesn't go towards the principal. It's just kind of extra money that you're paying out every month. But on a house that costs $500,000, a down payment of 20% would be $100,000. There's not a lot of people that just have $100,000 laying around for this down payment, plus the closing costs, plus the furniture. So very rarely do people actually come up with a full 20%, but if you can, you get to save yourself on that PMI. PMI is typically 0.5 to 1% of the loan annually, so very similar to the property tax. For our $500,000 house, this will be about $3,750 annually, or another $312 per month, which would then bring our monthly total to $3,240.16. And now that is the end of figuring out the mortgage equation. Some things that you do need to consider when you do move into this house eventually, though, is that your electricity, gas, water, trash, all of that is probably going to be higher than what you're currently paying now. So just kind of figure that into the budget as well. But as far as the main expenses and things that you really need to have a good grasp on, now you understand what you can actually set for your goal in this budget. So for the example that I've used in the video the whole time, we're looking at needing to at least have saved $50,000, and then also understand that every month after that, it's going to be about $3,200 in mortgage. So now, at least knowing these real numbers here based off of a $500,000 house, you can now decide if that sounds like something that's doable for you, or maybe we need to bring it down to $400,000, or we can go up to $600,000, but at least you have a starting point. And as far as actually building out that budget specifically custom to you, you're gonna wanna watch this in-depth step-by-step video now.